Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk, live from Las Vegas and Black Hat USA 2024. Up next at the news desk are two researchers from OX Security, Eyal Paz and Liad Cohen, who are here at Black Hat with a rather eye-catching briefing title, Will We Survive the Transitive Vulnerability Locus? Welcome to both of you, and thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's just start basics. What is a transitive vulnerability for our audience?
Okay, so to understand transitive vulnerabilities, we first need to understand how the software ecosystem works today.
Okay.
So today, when we build software, like let's say we want to build a web application, then we don't start with writing a web server and then starting to write each component from scratch. What we are doing is we are taking open source dependencies and we are building our application like Lego with the open source code, and on top of that we are adding our own business logic, like the real problem that we are trying to solve. So transitive vulnerabilities are actually vulnerabilities coming from the dependencies that we are using, because every dependency may have its own dependency tree with all of the dependencies that it needs. So basically, even if we are taking, we are very, very well selecting our dependencies that we are bringing from security point of view, there also a security baggage coming with their own dependencies. So the dependencies of the dependencies are what we call transitive dependencies, or transitive vulnerabilities in this case.
So log4j, that wouldn't necessarily be transitive.
Yeah, so log4j is very commonly was a direct dependency and a direct problem for a lot of people. But what interesting about Log4j, the famous Log4Shell vulnerability, that specifically Log4j was widely common in numerous layers. So even if you didn't use it as a direct dependency, most likely your other dependencies, the transitive dependencies, did use it. So it was all over the place. It was a problem as a transitive dependencies. It was also a problem in third-party products that you may host it, which you had zero visibility of. This is what caused a real crisis at the time.
So it seems that this is a two-pronged, there's a developer role to play, but then there's also a security team recovery and response.
Yeah, and this is also why a couple of years ago there was President Biden issued the executive order of everyone needs to have SBOM and understand which dependencies they have in their organization, both direct and transitive as well. So when the day comes and the next Log4Shell comes, they will be ready for it.
Do you think that is that happening? Are we there yet? Have we matured as an industry to the point where we do have good records and good references of what's in our systems?
So this is a very good question because we come a long way in the past 3 years since SBOM became mandatory. So before, up until 3 years ago, very, very few organizations could list an inventory of all of their dependencies.
And SBOM, just for our audience, is software bill of materials, which a vendor, typically, correct, will provide that details what, correct?
Right, so it can come from either a vendor or either from open source. There are many open source projects which also supply this capability.
Okay.
Now, regarding your previous question, so what we have today is indeed people, after they have their SBOM, there's also an important discussion in the community is regarding, okay, so we have this list, what now?
What do we do with it?
Yeah, so actually our research does connect with this discussion. So basically we are picking up the same discussion just from different angle because the reason that we got into this research is now when people do have their SBOM and they do run their open source security analysis, the software composition. So now they are dealing with thousands and up to 10,000 and hundreds of thousands of vulnerabilities. Now, basically, this is a too large problem for them to handle. So this is where our research comes into place, where we research of how we can prioritize, because nobody can deal with so many vulnerabilities. So we delve into the likelihood of exploitation of such vulnerabilities.
And so what factors go into how you determine the likelihood of exploitation?
Yeah,
So basically we analyze tens of thousands of applications, both open source and closed source, and looking on the vulnerabilities themselves, we took the approach of looking them into the CWE perspectives. CWE stands for Common Weakness Enumeration, where several CVEs can come into the same family or the same type of vulnerability. So let's say you have several CVEs under SQL injection, for example, that many knows about them. But basically, all of those CVEs on different products come on the same CWE of SQL injection, same type of family. And our research and the analysis we have done shows that many of them have different likelihood to be exploitable. So we dive deeper and prioritize which CWEs have less likelihood to be exploitable, and some of them might be more likelihood, has a higher likelihood to be exploitable. And the reason for that is because some of the behavior of the vulnerabilities themselves have to, we have all the stars to be aligned together. So for example, a data flow from an adversary or an outside source has to go into a specific vulnerable component from the dependency you bring into your project. And this data flow has to go with specific arguments or specific usage that you use with the open source that you bring into your project to make it actually exploitable. Some of them are actually less strict or easier to exploit. So that's the main research.
Let me ask you this. There appear to be, to me, two schools of thought on this vulnerability management. There's, you appear to be advocating for taking on the easy exploitable vulnerabilities first, rather than the most, what could do the most potential damage? What is the riskiest? How do you balance those two things?
Yeah, so the known vulnerabilities in open source dependencies, they have their own like base score, which is very notorious in the community. So the NVD managed this data, and in the past few years there was a lot of criticism regarding NVD, regarding their exaggerating with the base score. Now.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that. So
yeah, now from the NVD side, they're saying, guys, you got it all wrong. And this is part of the problem in the industry, because nobody intended for anyone to take the base score for granted. So if we will delve into the CVSS model, which calculate the severity, which is basically is a number between 0 to 10, then the base score is like the maximum severity of a given vulnerability.
the worst case scenario, if you will.
Yes, exactly. But again, this is the base score, and it wasn't supposed to be used like as a default. If you will delve into the CVSS model, basically what it says is you should take this base score and then start to have calculation regarding, okay, but what is the likelihood of your application to be vulnerable for this, for several reasons, like if it's connected to the internet, or whether it's they didn't say that exactly, but they actually meant, in a sense, what we did in our research is to determine the likelihood of reachability to actually trigger the exploitation. So basically what we did is to take the spirit of the CVSS and to apply it the actual, and to tune, and instead of using the base score of the vulnerability, to take its practical risk score. And this is why our research is really promoting this agenda, which relied dormant in the industry.
Where can our audience check out your briefing? Tell them when you'll be presenting your findings.
Yeah, sure. So we will present tomorrow at Black Hat at 2:30. So hope to see you there if you are around. And if not, then we are also posting a blog post explaining our research in our Ox security blog. And hopefully you can also you'll be able to see it on YouTube shortly.
And I apologize, it's Ox Security, it's not OX Security,
yeah,
correct?
Ox Security.
Apologies for getting that wrong. I want to thank you both, Eyal and Liad, for coming and sharing that. It's such an interesting topic. I could have talked about it for much longer, but thank you. And I hope everybody tunes into the briefing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.